Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. We've got Katie Thurston, the most recent Bachelorette, doing an interview with Whitney Cummings, one of the, I would say, wealthiest and most successful comedians of all time. Whitney Cummings is a treasure, and a lot of people, if you only know her from like one show or you know, a special here or something, she's not only hardworking, she's a killer on stage. And this is why we're going to play a few clips. This is why, and I don't know, you know, like I'm not a singer. I have a terrible voice, but a good singer can recognize a great singer and can recognize a bad singer, like a hacky. As a comic, I can see podcasters and know when there's bad podcasters and good podcasters. And that's why I'm really critical of a lot of the Bachelor Nation podcasts, because it's like, oh my gosh, they're real. Like some of these are really bad, but we consume it because it's like they have insider info. There's two things you need for podcasting and or YouTube: information and entertainment, right? You can be really funny, really interesting, really entertaining, or you can just have facts. And if you have facts and you just load people with those facts, then that can be good consumption as well. A lot of the Bachelor podcasts have a lot of facts because they got the tea, they got the juice. But as far as entertaining goes, it's like, oh my gosh, they're horrible. And I feel like people enjoy watching me just, you know, the kettle goes, you know, steam out my ears as I watch how horrible they are. Whereas Whitney Cummings, several decades of knowing how to talk into one of these things, knowing how to use her body as an instrument, find comedy, be interesting, let the guest go, know when to punch in. Those are things you can't teach. They just come with time. The tipping point, 10,000 hours. Whitney has it. Katie Thurston has the authenticity to match Whitney Cummings in the conversation department, where not afraid of what she's about to say, being open and honest. They talk about all sorts of things. I'll play a few clips. It's 3 hours long. You guys can check it out for the full podcast on your own time. But really look at that. Really look at the difference between someone who's like, all right, what do we want to talk about next? Well, it's that versus someone like Whitney who's like, all right, let's do 3 hours. Let's talk about it. She's great. Let's have a watch. Here's their opening conversation about Greg. Whitney asks, play this right here. Here we go.
Greg, it's so interesting. And I was not around. I wasn't on social media or going to parties about this. I mean, friends of mine have like parties for this show.
Yes.
Okay. There's these like they bring the cakes and the roses, and it's sort
a thing. It's an event.
I know, and I never know if it's a sex thing. I'm like, I don't understand what you guys are getting out of this. It's very odd, because I do think that in terms of, I want to ask you why you believe the show is so important to people and why it is such a religion to people. And for me, I think it's kind of like MMA for women.
Yeah.
You're watching people get like emotionally injured in a way, and you're sort of locked into our instinct to be attracted to Schadenfreude, which is the German word for us getting some kind of pleasure out of someone else's negative experience or embarrassment. We have this kind of train wreck need to watch it, aside just the rooting for you and wanting you to find the guy and being able to have a catharsis, you know?
Yeah.
Is that what you find?
I mean, I have no idea where this intense fandom comes from. Like, I thought I was a super fan because I watched the show. I've been watching for, I don't know, like 10 years or something. But then when I was on it, you kind of realize like what a true super fan is. And it's a whole, like you said, it's a religion.
It's an addiction and a religion. And the fans have this sort of, you work for them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This is my show and you're on it.
Yeah. No, it's
very strong opinions, because I think people get so connected to you in a way that they don't get connected to actors. You know, they don't see, you know, Reese Witherspoon on the street and be like, why didn't you marry Owen Wilson in that movie? He was so, everyone knows it was acting, you know, like people, you know, I guess just get very personally invested in a way that's.
Yeah, I don't know if they want to like see themselves in that situation. It's reality TV, so it is real to them. Not that it's not real to me as well, but yeah, like we're not actors, and so when they do see us and make decisions for me, they're like, well, I would have made it this way. This is how I would have handled it.
Sure.
And they're so invested in that one way or the other.
And I think it's also a way for people to be in a relationship without having to take all the risks in a way, you know, it's like a safe way to go like, well, that's not what I would have done. It's like that, you know, for people like me that are afraid of being in relationships, we can get on our high horse and be like, well, I would have done this. And it's like, I mean, I'm too scared to be in a serious relationship, but if I was, that's what I would do. You know, it's a bunch of people that are too afraid to take the risk.
Yeah.
You know, judging the person who actually is putting their heart on the line.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think people love. They
like
love
watching sports.
Yeah. There's great things about it. And then there's like the car crash that you're just like waiting to have happen.
Yeah.
And that's why there's always going to be drama. People are like, oh, it'd be such a great season if there just wasn't drama. It's like, well, people love the drama. So there's always going to be drama.
But I also think that there's something, you know, that like when we watch horror movies and like, you know, when you're like, get out of the way. Because the viewer sees the guys without you.
Yeah.
So I think we know some stuff that you don't know as well. So we're like, oh, hold on. The thing that he just said to that guy, I just saw something that you didn't see. So like, there's also this sort of addiction to trying to get you to like do what we would do or know what we know. And this is the first season that I really, I got very obsessed with the Greg storyline because it's taken me a long storyline, you know what I mean? Arc, whatever story.
Yeah.
Because it was like a master class in, I'm not trying to be negative about this person. I'm just trying to say sometimes when people say all the right things and say all the things you want to hear and their body language or actions are not congruous, that is a giant red flag. And to watch him say all these things to you that every girl wants to hear and you go, you don't seem happy.
Yeah.
This doesn't add up. And you like went right for your gut. It's like, I'm on this show. This guy wants to marry me. I just met his family. He's saying I love you. He's saying you filled a hole. He's saying all these romantic things. And you were like, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
In a way.
Right.
You know? And that is like, I'm like, oh, where were you when I was in my 20s? When I was only listening to what guys said instead of what they did or how they said it.
Yeah.
How did you like feel that?
It's funny because I remember earlier that day, actually, something felt off. And I just figured we hadn't seen each other in like a week. So I was like, oh, it's just like that awkwardness of like, oh, it's been a week. We haven't seen each other, you know? And it's your intuition. And that's the thing that I relied on the most, which I know sounds so like cliche, but like truly, you know, when something is off, you know? And so all day I kind of had this feeling, but I was just so like accommodating because it is unnatural. I'm like, he's just nervous. There's cameras. We haven't seen each other. But then like that night.
Which even if you're not the Bachelorette, a woman might go, oh, I'm just on my period. I'm just tired. Right. I'm probably being dramatic because we've been so conditioned to believe that we're always wrong and we're always being too emotional or too sensitive.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, even in the moment of all of that, that's how I felt. I was waiting until that episode to watch it back with like time and a different perspective. And so that whole time I'm waiting for this moment to air to be like, okay, I'm going to learn from this and see what I did wrong. And then of course, you know, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. It's this is a hot topic.
Yeah.
Of course, when I watched it back, I had my own feelings about it and was very actually upset and angry versus in the moment I was sad and apologetic and like, what did I do wrong? You know, and that's the unfortunate part about the whole thing. I think overall it was a very big learning experience for just everybody, no matter what side you took. It started a lot of very important conversations on a healthy relationship.
I 100% agree with you. And this is it's such a tiny, imperceptible thing. Someone could have said all the same words he said, and it would have been the most romantic thing ever. But there were strings attached. It was like, I'm going to share all this with you, contingent on the fact that you respond in the way that I need you to respond, which I don't believe you could have responded in any way that was going to be satisfactory. If you had been like, I love you too, it'd been like, well, you kind of said that quickly. Or you didn't, I don't feel like you meant that. Whatever it was, like I've been in those relationships before that kind of make you feel crazy because I think we're conditioned to believe if a man is vulnerable in any way, we have to like throw a party. It's like, he said, I love you, bring in, and you win $10,000. And we're not allowed to have any needs. We're not allowed to have any feelings or notes about it. Yeah. As long as it's, you fill a hole in my heart. We're conditioned to believe like, oh, now we just have to have an orgasm forever and give this person whatever they want. Because they just said a sentence that anyone can say. It's taken me so long to learn. It's not about what they're saying. It's about how they're saying it, about how you feel when they're saying it. And people can say things that they believe are true. They might not even know they're being manipulative. But if there's a string attached, if there's a result that is needed, that's not unconditional.
Yeah.
It was very conditional. And you can bully someone with by being vulnerable. Like I was just vulnerable. And then this is how you're going to act. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't realize your vulnerability meant that where's the script that I need to read from because you were vulnerable.
Right.
You know? And so that was just, I think that would have been confusing for me because I'm conditioned to go, a man loves me now. Well, I guess you were vulnerable. Now I have to give up everything because that's exclusive. That's so hard for you.
Right.
I cry in front of you every day.
Right.
And you say I love you once and now we have to drop everything.
Well, yeah. And it's hard because there were other relationships too. So you're like, how much is too much to say right now versus like, you know, the fantasy suites, the overnight dates where there's no cameras, no other people, uninterrupted time was coming up. And for me, regardless of who was going to make it to that final 3 spot, that was the moment I was waiting for with all the men is, you know, how are we going to interact uninterrupted for the next 8 hours, 9 hours? Because that's really telling, you know, with all these cameras here and producers and your family's here, like I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm like, how far is too far? What can I say? What should I not say? Because you're trying to be fair to these other relationships you're going to have.
I wasn't articulating well earlier. And now that you're being so articulate, I'm going to focus. I'm going to pull it together. So the first reaction, I think we're conditioned to go, how could you be so ungrateful with all the things he said to you? And I think this keeps a lot of people in toxic relationships. How can you walk away from that? How can you want to leave him? Or her? How could you want to get out of this? When you're like, I know it seems like this is really romantic and they're saying and doing all the right things and they're great on paper, but it's not right. Or this is a manipulation and this is, I'm not going to say abuse because I've been in situations like this where it's like everyone else is like, look how amazing he is. Look how vulnerable he's being. And you're like, but I am telling you it's not congruous or there's something in my intuition saying it's wrong.
All right, let's pause it there. I know this is a great convo. We can watch the whole thing. You know, we're only here to react. Maybe I'll make a few more videos talking about some other aspects of this. But I use this term a lot. Very fascinating. Very fascinating because you've got 2 women in their 30s that have dated the wrong guys, been in toxic relationships, learned to trust their gut, their instincts. And they talked about the Greg situation, the condition of love. They always say like love should be unconditional, but in so many cases it's like, love you. And you're just waiting to hear the other person say it back. Now I get it. You leaving for work. Love you, honey. Love you too, babe. Total great. We're good. But in this case, Greg's like, hey, here are all the things I'm feeling for you. And Katie's like, I can't tell you how I feel yet. I'm going to save that for the fantasy suite if we get there. And in no greater words, I think Katie thought at the time that was enough, that she had given him enough. And then but on his end, I was ruminating, like, I opened my heart. I exposed all these things that I don't normally expose. I didn't get the result. And then you become the kid at the kickball who takes the ball home. My ball, I'm going home. And he's like, no. And, you know, and it's very stubborn and immature. But that's what we have to learn, that we use conditions as survival mechanisms. So Greg's not a bad guy, but using love as a condition, you realize that someone who's been in a position before where they have been controlled, you know, like my fiance and I talk all the time on our podcast about how she's been in controlling relationships. So I think she was very immune to hearing sort of any conditions I would present to her. And which is interesting because as a guy who's tried to just survive and be happy my whole life, I probably brought Greg Grippo into the relationship. I probably brought terms where I would say, I love you because I felt it, but I also wanted to hear it back for my own codependency. So these aren't new things. These are things we all feel. I think on the surface level, though, when we look back and analyze the Greg Grippo, Katie Thurston scenario, I think we are quick to react in the moment and pick sides. But I think when we look back, we say, look, Katie felt sad in the moment. She watched it back and then felt angry. These are common, normal feelings to have when situations don't work out. She said something felt off, upset and angry. And also she mentioned, hey, no matter what side you were on, mine, his, the middle, it started conversations about gaslighting. Which, you know, Katie says that this was gaslighting, and a lot of psychologists says, no, it wasn't. And there's a lot of misuse of different terms, which doesn't mean that he was innocent of all things and she was. It just means that things can be complicated and people are doing the best with the info they have. A show like this will pour gasoline onto whatever emotions you have unresolved, okay? It'll pour gasoline onto whatever codependencies, jealousies, toxic behaviors you have. So there were strings attached. And in most cases, there are. If you truly love somebody, you should be able to let them go, hoping that they will come back because they love you too. Greg probably could have benefited from that sort of unconditional love And if it was meant to be, and he was in that place, maybe she would have come back and maybe they would have met. But as we know, he pushed her away. He said, I saw a side of you I never wanted to see. It was too much. I told you I loved you and you didn't give it back to me. All these things. And as Whitney says right here, man, it almost feels like no matter what Katie said in response, it wasn't going to be enough for him. And that's therapy he can work on in his own time. But us as an audience can realize this was a complicated relationship. It seemed so good so early on, and it didn't live up to those expectations. Very interesting stuff. Do me a favor. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals for updated show information. I'm going to be all over Orlando, New York City, Napa, and maybe Cincinnati. I'm still working on it. Maybe Arizona next month, Scottsdale. Still working on it. So stay up to date on my Instagram at DNeals. And also don't forget you can join the Facebook community we just started. Dave Neal's community. I'm posting all the info there. If you haven't checked it out, I have a Survivor recap that's up. And also, let's see if I can find it right here. I just recapped the Britney Spears conservatorship that's taking place, Rachel Lindsay, with some behind-the-scenes content on that. So you can go check out all of that on my YouTube. Sometimes the algorithm won't give you those alerts if they're not Bachelor related, but I assure you it's there. You can hit the alert button on the channel so you get all of my content. And don't forget, subscribe and like this video on the way out. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the comment section. Bye now.